At 20 to midnight on the 19th of June this year, phones across Brazil started going off. Not a message anyone could act on. One word, misspelled, from the National Civil Defense System. Over the next hour and 40 minutes, 10 of them went out, across cities holding something like 30 million people, before anyone got the platform shut down. I'll come back to that. I want to start with your phone, because there's a setting on it that isn't there. Open your settings and look for emergency alerts. What you see depends on your phone, but the federal rules are specific. There are 4 classes of alert message your carrier has to be able to receive and pass on to you. 3 of them have switches: imminent threats, amber alerts, public safety messages. You can turn every one of those off right now and nothing will stop you. The 4th one is called the national alert. On my phone, it's a row with the switch grayed out, locked on. On some phones, the switch isn't drawn at all. On others, the row doesn't appear, which is its own kind of answer. And the reason you can't turn it off isn't that your carrier won't let you. It's in the statute, and it's one clause. A carrier that sends emergency alerts may offer you the ability to stop your device receiving them, or classes of them, other than an alert issued by the President or the administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. That's the whole exemption. The FCC puts it plainly on its consumer page. Consumers cannot block national alerts. Your phone isn't refusing you, it's complying. Before I go further, I want to clear something up, because almost everything people know about alert failures comes from one morning in Hawaii, and most of it is wrong. January 2018, a ballistic missile alert goes out across the state. It takes 38 minutes to correct properly. The story that stuck is that an employee clicked the wrong item in a drop-down menu. He didn't. There was a drop-down and he used it, and he selected the live alert on purpose because he thought a missile was coming. The drill that morning was routine. A supervisor played a recording down the phone, and he'd written his own version of the script, blending the standard drill wording with the wording of a real missile alert, including the phrase, "This is not a drill." Other people on that call understood it was an exercise. This employee did not. He told NBC afterward, "I was 100% sure that it was the right decision, that it was real." I'll be fair in both directions here. The FCC's report also notes his agency had held concerns about his performance for over 10 years and that he'd confused real events with drills before. He declined to be interviewed, so the account is his employer's. There's a smaller detail underneath all of that. Those screenshots that went round afterward, the ugly interface everyone used to explain how obviously bad the design was, that wasn't the real screen. Hawaii's Emergency Management Agency put out a mock-up by mistake when the governor's office asked for an image. Their spokesman, Richard Raposa, said, "That's on us. That's on our office. An error was made in the way we handled the governor's request." Millions of people looked at a picture of a screen that did not exist and drew conclusions about a system they had never seen. But the danger that morning was never the text. It was what people did before the correction. The state's 911 centers took about 7,800 calls in that hour. A normal Saturday morning is 250 to 350. 2,660 of those calls were never answered by anybody. And there's a detail in the FCC's report I can't get out of my head. The board of the National Association of the Deaf happened to be in Honolulu that weekend, all of them deaf. They moved into a windowless storage room in a school library and waited there for about 20 minutes because the corrections were going out over radio and television. The alert reached them, the all clear didn't. Here's the first thing that complicates an alert nobody can turn off. Carriers don't have to carry the system at all. It's voluntary. A provider that doesn't want to send emergency alerts files a letter saying so, and then has to tell customers at the point of sale that it presently does not transmit wireless emergency alerts. By the FCC's count, over 450 wireless providers have done exactly that, though the register those numbers come from was flagged in the same document as possibly out of date, so treat it as an order of magnitude. So the alert you cannot refuse is one your provider can decline on your behalf, and you'd find out by reading a contract you signed years ago. Here's the second thing, and this is the one I keep coming back to. The last time anyone tested the system nationwide was October 4th, 2023. Every phone that was on and in range got the same message. This is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. No action is needed. There was no nationwide test in 2024. There was none in 2025 either. and the FCC said so directly both years, in the same sentence both times. FEMA will not conduct a nationwide EAS test this year. The requirement is in federal law. Nationwide tests, not less than once every 3 years. October 2023 plus 3 is October 2026. As I record this, nothing has been announced. Proving something hasn't been scheduled is a weak kind of proof, so take that for what it is. What I can tell you is that the Commission published a major order on alerting security in June 2026, and the most recent nationwide test it cites is still October 2023. Almost nothing about this alert is left up to the phone. Federal regulation specifies the sound down to the frequency. 2 tones, 853 and 960 Hz, sounded together. 1 long burst of 2 seconds, then 2 short ones of a second each, and the whole sequence played twice. The vibration is written down the same way, and then the rule does something stranger with it. It reserves that pattern. Under Part 10, that cadence is not allowed to mean anything else. Nothing else on your phone is permitted to buzz like that. What the rules never say is that any of it has to be loud. I assumed this thing overrode silent mode. It doesn't. And the Commission was explicit about why. The rule says a device may include the capability to mute the audio attention signal. When someone proposed making the sound mandatory, the FCC turned it down and said doing that would deprive people of the flexibility they have to mute it by putting the phone in Do Not Disturb. It called that a consumer choice worth protecting. There's one more thing it isn't allowed to do. If you're already on a call, the alert is specifically forbidden from interrupting it. So the guarantee is narrower than it sounds, and it's 1 sentence long. National alerts must always be presented. It reaches your screen. That's the promise. Not that you'll hear it. There have been plenty of false alerts. The one I keep thinking about was in Southern California in November 2025. An estimated 10 million phones lit up with a message that read, roughly, "This is a test of the alert system. There is no emergency." A test, sent live to 10 million people. But here's what all of these have in common, and it took me a while to see it. They're sent by states, counties, cities, and by the regulation's own definition, a national alert can only be issued by the president's designee, or the administrator of FEMA. So structurally, none of them could have been national alerts. They came in through the doors you're allowed to close. As far as anyone outside can tell, the one you can't close has never gone off wrong. It also seems to have barely gone off at all. The gear that carries all this has a history. February 2013. Television stations across 5 states broadcast an emergency alert, saying the bodies of the dead were rising from their graves and attacking the living. Somebody logged into the alerting boxes using factory default passwords, printed in manuals anyone could download. August 2022. FEMA sends an advisory warning that vulnerabilities in alerting equipment could let someone issue EAS alerts over the host infrastructure. Then in 2025, a run of radio stations had their broadcasts hijacked, in several cases with obscene audio carrying simulated alert tones. That one is a different failure. The FCC said the attackers got into the studio to transmit a link, the equipment that carries programming out to the tower, not the alerting box. Different door, same building. The number that stopped me is older than any of it. When the FCC studied the October 2023 nationwide test, it found that about 23% of alerting equipment units were running outdated software or hardware no longer supported with updates at all. Nearly 3 years later, in that June order, the Commission was still citing that same figure, because it's still the most recent one anybody has. None of that touches your phone. Those are broadcast stations. The phone side has its own problem, and it's simpler than you'd want it to be. In 2019, a team at the University of Colorado Boulder, led by Gyu-Hong Lee, published a paper called "This is Your President Speaking: Spoofing Alerts in 4G LTE Networks." The finding is that the alert your phone cannot refuse arrives carrying nothing that proves where it came from. There's no signature on it. Your phone doesn't check because there's nothing to check. They built fake base stations and demonstrated it. The number people quote isn't quite what they did. The live tests ran at 1/10 of a watt inside a shielded box. The famous result, 4 transmitters covering 49,000 of a 50,000-seat stadium, is a simulation. I'll also say what I couldn't establish. That paper is about 4G. I could not find a public demonstration of the same attack against a 5G standalone network, and I don't know whether that's because it doesn't work or because nobody has published it. In June 2026, the FCC took up alerting security properly. It proposed requiring digital signatures on alerts going to broadcasters, so a station can verify a message is real before it airs. That's the fix, and they proposed it. Across 2 paragraphs of the same document, they declined to extend any of it to phones. One of those paragraphs turns on a single sentence, and I want to read it exactly. There have been, quote, no reported instances of those kinds of attacks on WEA being successful. Not that it can't be done, that nobody has reported it working. That order was adopted on the 25th of June. 6 days earlier, this happened. Late on Friday the 19th of June, somebody got into Brazil's National Civil Defense Alert platform. Not a fake tower, the real system, from the inside, apparently using leaked credentials belonging to public employees. Between 11:41 at night and 1:23 in the morning, 10 false alerts went out across 7 states and the federal district, into cities holding an estimated 30 million people. 9 of them arrived as sirens on people's phones, through the cell broadcast system. The text varied, but the word running through them was misanthropy, sometimes spelled with a number in place of a letter. The 10th went out as an ordinary text message, and it's the one that got picked up everywhere, because it read, Alert! Possibility of a tornado in the region of Belo Horizonte. Protect yourself. Alien attack. Humans, we have arrived. The National Civil Defense pulled the platform at 1:30. The federal police opened an investigation. Volney Wolf, Brazil's National Secretary for Civil Protection, said they had to work out how these people managed to breach our security. Someone using the alias Misanthropo later claimed responsibility in an interview with a Brazilian tech outlet. Nobody confirmed it was them, and as of late June, no arrests had been reported. So, one message class reaches every phone in the country. You are not allowed to decline it, and it carries nothing that proves who sent it. I want to be fair about the timing. The Commission was writing about the American system, and Brazil is a different country running different software. Both of those sentences can be true at the same time. Go and look at your settings again. Find the row with no switch. The last nationwide test was October 2023. The law says every 3 years. That runs out in October. Nobody has said when.